Hi guys, welcome to University. And so this is a brand new series that I said I was going to do in the re-emergence video when I reintroduced my channel for about the billionth time. And today I'd like to welcome my great friend from university, Dan.
Hello, how are you doing, Jono? Are you all right?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's a pleasure to be here.
Lovely. So guys, comment down below what you think of this podcast. Like, subscribe. It's also going out on the iTunes podcast, so subscribe to that for more, because there will be more episodes in the series. But today, me and Dan are just going to talk to you about our 3 years at university. But specifically, we're going to focus on mental health, because I believe that this is one of the biggest topics that needs to be talked about. Because I remember thinking that, particularly, I'm not sure about you, Dan, just to get started, but I remember at school, do you remember when you were like in sixth form and then you had all these talks about different universities and where you should go, etc., etc.? Yeah. I always thought to myself that it was a bit too positive for me. And I know that sounds bad, but, you know, there wasn't enough that schools or the education system for that. They didn't do enough in talking about the dangers of university, the dangers of the pressure, the detrimental that you could possibly experience.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think when you're in especially your second year of sixth form, it's that thing of being rushed into, right, what do you want to do? What is it you want to make of yourself? And you're given kind of a small window in between exams and revision and all that stuff to kind of get a list of options. And it's the same for everyone, which is why I think it's probably something that isn't talked about as much. But I think it's one of those things that everyone has to book up and go through. And we're not really given, I think a lot of the stuff, especially for the first year of uni, a lot of the stuff that we kind of had to face, our anxieties and our sort of assessments and things, they weren't nearly talked about as much as, oh, this university's fantastic. Oh, this university's, it's a new life. It's a new life for you as a new adult. So we kind of got sold that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a thing of where we had to face it ourselves, didn't we? We had to go through it ourselves to actually understand it and to realise that this was happening to us. Which for me, I think is really, I think it's almost tantamount to being cruelty. I mean, cruelty is a big word these days, but I certainly believe that what the education system does is miss out the fundamental parts of university, because obviously our experience has been up and down. It's mainly been ups, don't get me wrong. It's been fantastic. I think it's safe to say we've both had a superb experience at university, but I certainly feel that when I had my low moments, which we'll go into a bit more detail a bit later, I certainly feel like I wasn't prepared for them. And that's because I didn't believe they could happen, because I feel like the education system built up your expectations of university so highly that it almost made you believe that it was going to be a perfect time. 3 years, 4 years, whatever your course was going to be. They almost expected you to take it by the scruff of its neck and that be it. 3 years, plain sailing, no problems.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think there is no way. I don't think any of us were really prepared as much as we could have been for what uni had and what uni kind of entailed. Going from sixth form, which is kind of very comfortable and kind of, I guess, depending on where you went, or if it was still at your own school, it's still very familiar and very sort of, it felt like just another couple of years at sort of in the place that you feel the most at home. To go from that to, I'm sure you'll be able to massively appreciate this, to go from a place that you're very comfortable with, you in Nottingham, and having to move over to Manchester, it's a big thing. And having to kind of adapt yourself, especially for doing it maybe for the first time, to adapt yourself to new surroundings, as well as going to something that is exceptionally harder than college. That's not easy for anyone. I think everyone listening will be able to sort of agree with that to some extent, I guess.
I think the difference with me to obviously the jump between secondary school and university, for the final 2 years of my school life, I was living at school. So I went to a boarding school from year 7 to year 13 all the way through. But I only started boarding from year 12 to year 13 because I thought to myself, hey, if I'm going to university, and I'd kind of already reached a kind of decision where I wanted to go to a university that was in Nottingham. I kind of thought to myself, if I start small, because at this boarding school, you know, while we did have Saturday school, I went back home for the weekends, but I kind of prepared myself for the university experience by staying away, by obviously living at school Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So the jump wasn't as much of an impact because I'd already had that kind of experience of, I won't say providing for myself because obviously there were meals there that were provided for you, but I had the basic understanding and the basic kind of feeling of what it felt like, even though there were still people around you to look after you. E.g., you had your housemates, you were also your fellow friends at school. You had a few of the teachers, and you had other members of staff who you just saw generally around the place. So definitely the feeling of, you know, providing for yourself and being so independent, that was a big jump. But I think the idea of just living away from home didn't hit me as hard, I think.
Yeah, you must have had some sort of way of being able to adapt to it because you had those 2 years in the boarding school. And for someone like me who's completely different, I've been living at home since the start. I've never really left. For you, it must have been very different because at least you've had that sort of the small step up. You know how to provide for yourself. You know how to live with people. You know how to be with people in boarding. So I guess that must have made things slightly easier, but only slightly. I'm guessing it's still a daunting prospect having to go to a new place, find new people, and kind of lose that familiar network that you have, because even though you must have boarded for a couple of years, that's completely different to living with people in uni that you've only just met. You know, different people, different situations, different personalities. Obviously, mostly good, which is an odd thing, but you have to adapt anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
so I can see that.
I mean, I agree. I mean, just before we move on to the first year and how we both kind of approach that, I think the big thing that we're going to say to everyone who's listening, particularly from this part of the conversation, is that schools obviously don't do enough to talk about the feeling of moving away from home and the pressures of moving away from home. Because I remember how, particularly in first year, I didn't go home much because I was just enjoying life so much up here. I didn't feel the need to go home as much. But I certainly feel like if there is something that people can take away from this section of the conversation, is definitely don't feel pressured to not go home. Speak to your family every single day, and don't feel pressured to go home, even if it's going to cost you a bit of money. You know, you might work that back. Your parents might offer you a bit of bob, saying, "Hey, you actually came home and see us. You actually paid attention to us after you left." But if there's one thing that we're going to take away from this part of the conversation, it's definitely don't feel too pressured to go home. Don't feel too pressured at all. If you go into a university which is actually near your home, don't feel pressured to go into halls just because it's the norm. So moving into the first year, which got to admit, that was a cracking year, wasn't it? It was an absolutely cracking year. But obviously, from our perspective now, looking at the big wide world out in front of us, you know, it feels like an absolute lifetime ago, doesn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. It was one of those things where going into a new experience, it all felt very sort of like everything was completely new. It was like all shiny and chrome and beautiful. And going into a new place, there is that sort, even though you're nervous, there is that sort of excitement about going into a new situation. And obviously getting to know people. I mean, I you probably agree with me on this. I get on with people completely this year that I wouldn't have spoken to in first year, because you have to find your own little sort of group or your own little sort of amount of people that you feel comfortable talking to. And that's not a bad thing or anything like that. It's just what we do. We have this certain amount of people in our lessons. We have a certain amount of people who we're like relatively close to, whether it be in halls or whether it be living in a student house. So first year it's very odd because it's kind of very, I wouldn't say vanilla, but it's like an opening flavour. It is. It's just it's an opening flavour to it.
It's just that feeling that you get when you peel off the. It's that feeling that you get when you peel off the thing that the screen of the iPhone for the first time.
You
want to savour every single minute, and it comes off, and you suddenly you come back down to earth and think, "Damn, that was an
beautifully put."
Yeah,
beautifully put.
Yeah, I agree with you though. I completely agree because obviously the step up is it's a completely different part of your life, and you know, it's so different. You're meeting new people for the first time in 6-7 years. 7 years, or even from year 7 to year 13. So it's a big thing. And I remember coming into Manchester and being so excited about who I was going to meet, and I didn't want it to be a thing of the first night, I've just moved in, I'm tired, I'm gonna kind of I suppose stay in that night. I'm gonna just have a sleep, have a quiet night in, and then I'll go out and socialize tomorrow. But no, I didn't do that. I thought to myself, hey, I'm gonna go out and socialize right now. So I met I met someone who I'm still friends with all the way to the end, to the end of my university experience, and hopefully forevermore. But, I feel like that set the tone. That set the tone of going out and seeing people. That certainly provided me with a platform to bounce on and just hit the ground running without any kind of expectations, any kind of any set goals saying, hey, I want to be the most liked person. I'm just going to take it so relaxed, and I'm just going to meet people and take it from there. And just putting yourself out there was probably the biggest thing for me right at the start of that.
Yeah. Well, the one thing, speaking of them, the one thing that I noticed about uni is that when you go into it, you can be and do and act within reason, however you want. There is no restriction. There's no school sort of cliquey stuff. You can go into uni and you can throw yourself in, and the people you become closest with are the ones who accept you for who you are and want to get to know you. And I think, especially with me, I've noticed that the people I'm closest with are the ones who there's a mutual want to find out about about people's backgrounds and where they've come from and what they want to do with their lives. Uni is kind of the missing link between education, like formal education, and going into adult life, I think.
Yeah.
And first year is, obviously we'll talk about the good and the bad, but first year is a great bridging point because it throws you in kind of almost completely into the deep end. But it's kind of exciting. Like you feel a sort of, wow, this is new, and I'm going to make something of it. I guess some people might. Anyway,
I like how you mentioned the fact that it's a bridge, because it is, isn't it? Because I think if you had to define, 3 years at university, I think a lot of people who are listening to this would say that year one was definitely the social. It was the social year, wasn't it? Because I think I lost count on the amount of times that I actually went out to clubs and stuff like that. And I think I lost count of the amount of times that, we had flat parties and stuff like that. I even lost count of the amount of times that you were in my flat and we were playing FIFA. So I've still got that PlayStation profile photo that I made, I remember that video.
Oh, wow.
Singing to the Thomas the Tank Engine theme tune.
Yeah, but they were sort of the most open and wonderful, well, some of the most open and wonderful days at uni. I think first year, famously, you get told in college that your second year of sixth form or college is always harder than your first year of uni. And I would tend to agree with that, because when we went in, it was mainly the main thing that I tried to juggle was seeing all these people that I'd just gotten to know and like was getting on with, such as you, and playing FIFA in your flat till God knows what time in the morning.
Yeah.
That I'd getting to know that, and also just adapting to a new situation, especially the first few months. So in that respect, the first year of uni is easier, and if anything, it's a lot more exciting. Yeah. So yeah, I agree. I do.
Because it's falling in love with another city, isn't it? Because obviously, depending on where people have gone, people are going to have different experiences. But I certainly feel that that's down to the way that they approach the year, the way they almost approach the first night. You know how you know how like in presidencies you've got the first 100 days, and that's kind of like
you got the 100 days. Yeah,
you've got the first 100 days. I think at university, in some way you can be defined by your first night. Your first night or your first full day.
Yeah.
Because if you don't take it by the scruff of the neck, I feel like you're going to struggle, because you're going to set that tone initially, because nighttime is usually where all the first years kind of like congregate. So you've got to congregate yourself in areas where they're going to be. And that's how you're going to meet people, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm interested from your perspective, because obviously we talked about earlier how you lived at home. How difficult did you find that, living at home where the vast majority of us were living on campus and we had that access to each other? How did you feel about interacting in that sense?
It's odd to look back on it, because with the 2 years or the 1.5 years that we've had since then, I'd say I'm a lot more socially active with everyone. Obviously, with Corona going on, it's all kind of taken a bit of a stop. But living at home for first year was it was kind of odd, and not in the sense that I felt on the back foot or I felt like I was kind of falling behind, but it was odd because I knew the area, I knew what I was doing, but all the people around me didn't. And they were slowly starting to adapt to something that I'd done maybe 5 or 6 years ago, getting to know Manchester and things. It was also odd because I spent a lot less time with people who I'm very close with now, a lot less time with those people, purely because I didn't live with them. And a lot of people I know live kind of close to each other. I know a few people on our course just so happen to be in the same flats in Peel Park and stuff like that. Peel Park, for anybody who doesn't know, is just like a lovely bit of accommodation that is on campus near the building that we used to go into. So people were kind of together a lot more than I was with them. So the way I see first year was kind of that I observed rather than took part, because I wasn't in enough to be able to take part as much. And we'll get onto it, but obviously things like anxiety and other sort of factors going on in our lives kind of stop us from going out as much as we could have done. Whereas other people, such as maybe you, might have taken the opportunity and thought, you know what, I'm in a new place, let's go out and enjoy myself. And I don't know, I'm using you as an example. It might be the complete opposite for you, but that's kind of that's the difference with living at home, I think.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think particularly in my first year situation, I remember that I was obviously living in a flat with some other people who were who were also first years, but they were on different courses. So I remember that when I was going out with the course mates. And for those listeners who aren't privy to what our course situation is, we've been on a course where we've had about only 40 plus people, which isn't normal at university. I think everyone can agree. About a course of about 40 people, honestly, it opens your eyes, and particularly because my parents have been university teachers for pretty much their entire careers. And I've seen firsthand their courses are 200, 300 people. For us to have this number of people on the course, it's been absolutely incredible, because it's benefited our social thing. It's benefited our social lives, because we know everyone by name. Like, we can all fit in a group chat without so many people going off at once. So I think that's definitely been a massive thing. Just a slight point of interest before I go on to my living situation in year one. But I think in year one, I spent more of my time with you guys as a course than I did with my flatmates, because
I'd agree with that.
Because we were all, I think we all had our different mates on different courses and stuff like that. And I think even when you're thrust into that situation of living with people who you don't really know, you're going to struggle, I think, because you have to make a decision either way of who you choose to kind of hang out with a lot of the time. And they hung out as a flat a lot more in Freshers Week than I did with them, if that makes sense. So I hung out with you guys a lot of the time rather than the flat guys. But I didn't have any regrets about that. I absolutely, like, I love them to death, and I think they're amazing people and stuff like that. I know I've not been in touch with them for a while, but no, I'd still made that same decision again, because that was what benefited me at the time. So from my perspective, there wasn't any pressure on who you chose to hang out with and stuff like that. You still got on with them regardless of that. So
yeah, of course. Because something I want to point out just from my own experiences, I never did Freshers Week. I didn't go out Freshers Week in first year, and I thought I was a lot more socially active in second year, so I thought, I'll do it, and then I ended up not doing it because I didn't feel it, and then I thought, third year, I'll definitely do it. I know everyone now, I may as well, and I didn't do it. So I for whatever reason, I avoided Freshers Week like the plague every year, whether it was, I don't know, whether it was anxiety or whether it was this, that, and the other. I just wasn't really into it. And I got a lot of people obviously saying, which isn't a bad thing. They all wanted me to come out and things. But I got a lot of people going, how come you don't come out? And I just didn't know. I was like, I'm not quite sure, but I'm not really into it. I'd like to keep my own, especially in first week back, I'd like to keep my own distance, I guess, which would be good right now, but not back then. But I'd like to keep sort of, I liked going back in sort of a more relaxed way than Freshers, I guess. Freshers Week isn't for everyone. It's fantastic and it's really exciting, but it isn't for everyone, I don't think.
Well said.
Yeah.
I think that's another key point as well, particularly in first year, because I feel like everyone makes a lot of the tradition to go out. And I will admit, in first year, I did want to have that experience myself, but as we'll say a bit later when we go into year 2 and year 3, kind of the novelty wears off. The novelty massively wears off because you've done it once. Do you really want to do it again because you know you're going back? It's almost like when you go to school, you know, you're not going to have any massive, you know, school parties when you're going into, I'd say, year 9 or year 10, because the novelty just wears off. It's not the same as if you're going into year 7 or you just starting GCSE year, or you're just going into college or sixth form. The novelty just wears off after a while. So I don't think there should be any pressure on anyone to do it. If you don't want to, that's completely your prerogative, and no one should judge you for that. They should just respect that. So I mean, moving on a bit from the first year social side of things, how, and I think we'll move into how we approached it academically. So how did you find it academically, you know, moving into that stage? How stressful did you find it compared to school, obviously?
Compared to sort of the other two. I think I'd be right in saying this, that first year was academically wise the easiest. We had to do the most coming in for seminars and lectures on our course. I'm not sure if that's the same for everyone else, but on our course we'd have to seminars and lectures were a lot, and the work was I'd want to say spaced out, but was very sort of, you were very essay based, especially in the first year. First year was all about learning. I think that's the same for everyone else. It was a refresher of what you've probably learned in the past, or stuff that you've probably never heard of before. Looking at different, you know, people, for our case, practitioners. Just first year is all about sort of, it's very rigid learning. Compared to second and third year, it's a lot easier. And I'm not saying it's the same for everyone else, but for me, it was a hell of a lot easier. Because the essays were shorter. It was a pass or fail year, so there wasn't much pressure. And I often think that when you have less amount of pressure, you might do better, if you get what I mean. So that's kind of, academic-wise, that's what I think first year was like.
It was very easy. I think it was also, we had a lot of practical sessions, didn't we? Obviously, we went in nearly every single day of the week, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And the other thing was, we also got affected, didn't we, by the strikes that went on in first years. So we did have that affect us, but it didn't affect us or stress us out as much because we were, obviously, as you said, we weren't feeling the pressure. But I think it set the ground running for what, not necessarily the absolute standard they expected, but what we were in for in the following 2 years of the course.
It was a solid foundation. I'd say, because it was kind of an all-encompassing thing. It was like a watered-down version of what we would do over the course of the next 2 years. And obviously, as time went on, we became more and more practical, especially towards the end of first year. But they laid the ground as much as they could, I'd say. And I'd say it worked. I would say it worked. I'm not sure. You might disagree with me on that. I'm not sure if you might agree or disagree, but I'm not sure. But I think it laid a decent foundation.
I mean, I agree. It laid a decent foundation. I think certainly there was it was almost an introduction into how to be independent for yourself. And I mean, absolutely independent, because we didn't have the teachers there 24/7, you know, not 7 days a week, but we didn't have them there for us to say, hey, I'm going to come round by your classroom this afternoon. Can you do this? Because they were busy off with other courses and other modules. So I certainly feel like the first year was an introduction into how to kind of work yourself and how to kind of work things out for yourself rather than going to the teachers too much.
Yeah, of course. The structure is very different to if you're in sixth form or if you're in high school. The structure is not you go to this person 5 or 4 times a week for 1 hour, and you can go and speak to them at lunch. You can go and speak to them this, that, and the other. They have their own sort of research and things to do as well. So they'll give you their time, and they will give you a couple of lessons, maybe a week, a lesson in a seminar, and they'll be a lot longer than your regular lessons, whether that be between 2 and 4 hours.
Yeah.
But the structure is rigid in a very different way to high school. There's not really a timetable. I would say there is a small pattern of you have one lecture on this day and you have this on that day, but it's a lot more spacious. It's not locked in as much, I don't think.
Yeah, it's certainly not locked in, like you say. You do have to keep up and keep organised. I think that was one of the most important things. It was teaching you to stay organised even when we didn't have anything going on. They kind of encouraged you to work, as my mum always said, a day off isn't a day off, it's actually a study day.
It's a study day, yeah.
It's a study day. So don't call it a day off, and don't bother going off to like
no
a national tourist. Don't go to a tourist attraction during the weekday. Trust me, it doesn't work. You fill yourself with shame and guilt.
Yeah, of course. It is. And the one thing I realised in first year is that you're working for yourself. There is no hand holding. That's one thing I'd want people to know if they're going into uni. People will help you out, and people will do this, that, and the other, but uni is your chance to prove to yourself and to the people that are teaching you, and to I guess your course mates, that you can do this for yourself. And first year is the complete antithesis of that. It is literally an all-encompassing year of a basic structure with seminars and stuff, individual study, and a hell of a lot of research notes that are either given to you or like a path for you to follow. So I
think ultimately what in some way that we're trying to say is that obviously in first year the contact time is huge, because the tutors are obviously, they're getting to know you. They're spending a lot of time with you to make sure that they understand how you work and stuff like that. So particularly for first year, spend as much time with your tutors as possible and get to know them, because as the 2 following years went on, the contact time shrunk significantly. So, and we were, some of us were paired up with, tutors who we had got to know in the first year, so they knew us. So I think that's the key thing. The key thing in the first year is almost networking. It's another form of networking, isn't it? Making sure that you get to know these tutors, and then by third year, they'll pair you up with the right one because you've got to know them and you put yourself around. So, so I think to sum up the first year part of the conversation, it was definitely a bridge, wasn't it? Of course. It was definitely a bridge to the next years, but it was also something that hit the ground running with a positive kind of sense. Which was absolutely fantastic, and I've got so many memories of that, so many memories of first year that we could divulge to you, but unfortunately we don't have the privacy rights, do we? So of everyone else. So
one day,
that,
Jono,
one day we will. One day it will come out. One day it's going to come out on this series, right? So we're going to move to the second year now, and second year in terms of accommodation, I know for you, it didn't really change, did it? No. The ball just moved to the side a little bit.
This is
you wanted it a bit. You wanted it a bit bigger, didn't you?
Yeah, just a tiny bit. The ball's in your court here, Jono. You'll know more than I do over this sort of stuff.
So for second year, in terms of the accommodation, I found a house with my course mates. And we lived together. It was about 6 of us. We lived together in this house. It was about, I'd say, 15, 20 minutes away from the university. Not far at all. Really good walk. But unfortunately, it wasn't in the nicest area. So obviously, early on that we got burgled. We got burgled into, which... Unfortunately, the way that I spoke about in first year particularly, it set the tone. I certainly feel like for my second year, even though I luckily didn't have anything taken, I certainly feel like second year for me, the tone was almost set straight away then.
Yeah.
Because it shook us up massively. It really shook us up, and it made us very...
It must have done.
It made it very... it didn't become the nicest place to live because we were always worried at night and we couldn't really sleep as much. Eventually, you built up a resistance to that, but it took maybe a month or two.
It would have taken time. I would have.
And I think for some it might have taken a bit longer, but it certainly set the tone. I certainly feel like socially, it didn't nothing against the housemates or anything like that, but the house eventually, right at the start, almost became a negative place to live in.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
It would. You've been marred with an awful experience. It's not. It's especially because it happened within the first few weeks of you moving in there.
It was in Freshers Week.
Oh wow!
So it was in Freshers Week, so we hadn't even been back. Like we hadn't really been back because obviously we started in October and it all happened to us in September. So it was going on even when we started back for university for studies. But I think credit to everyone. We went into university and just cracked on. We got on with it.
You did. So it's not. It's a very traumatic and feeling powerless type experience. Having someone come in and take your stuff and be in your personal space.
Yeah.
Especially in an area where you probably didn't feel safe anyway because of the way it was presented and things like that. Mustn't have helped at all. And feeling powerless in those moments and like how it must have, like I said, it must have marred your experience being there. having that worry over you all the time. That's not going to have a good impact on your first proper student house. Yeah. Your first proper student house is supposed to be like a haven for you and your friends to sort of just come back and you make it your own. And I saw all of your rooms, and all of your rooms were like so you. Do you know what I mean? You make it your living space, and it's your first time for everyone there. It was probably their first time away from home. And to have that happen within the first couple of weeks, that's awful. Genuinely.
I think, I completely agree with you, because like we came into that house and we were all so excited because obviously we were living in a house with our course mates, and it was a house that we thought we'd got a brilliant deal on, because we thought at the price that it was obviously, it was a bit dark. It was a bit dark. Things probably needed to be done to it, but the rooms were really nice, and there was the ability for us to make them into our own. So yeah, I mean, don't want to dwell on it too long, but it was it certainly was a traumatic experience. That I think,
of course it is,
and I think it did start to affect our social lives, particularly from my perspective, anyway. I remember, I think, particularly in that year, I only went out to a few clubs, maybe, I don't know, 3-4 times, maybe, in that entire year.
Yeah, you must have gone out a lot less, because, I mean, you'd want to, it's a natural thing. If someone's been into your space, if you've been robbed, you naturally want to be at home to be in control, to make sure nobody can come along and take your stuff. That's completely natural.
Yeah,
it's not an easy thing to cope with, and I noticed the sort of I don't know, the worry that was there, and it'd be for anyone who's watching this who's been robbed or mugged, or that feeling of powerlessness is horrible.
Yeah,
of not having control over your own place.
It's gut wrenching.
I noticed. Yeah, it is completely gut wrenching. It's not nice.
So yeah, moving on from that. In terms of, I remember that you were saying about in second year you wanted your social life to be a bit more. In the second year, like, how did that go for you? I suppose. How did you approach that?
Well, first of all, what I'd say is, obviously, because as I was talking before about first year, towards the end of first year, I started to get to know people properly. There are people who I am incredibly close with now that I probably spoke to maybe once or twice during first year.
Yeah.
And but at the end of first year, when we all started doing our own sort of showcases and performing in front of everyone, because obviously we do theatre, I noticed that the people who I speak to the most now are people who probably I didn't have anything to do with for the most of first year. So for second year, I had that sort of a bit of a buzz, or sort of a push to be like, well, I know these people now. I sort of have a chance to go out with them, and I feel comfortable going out with them. So I wanted second year to be a lot more active than first year. And I think because second year was a lot more practical, as everyone watching probably knows, I thought, well, if there's not as much academic stuff, I can go out more and I can try and enjoy myself more. And obviously, as uni goes on, you gain more confidence both with this new group of friends and with the places you go to, I guess. So yeah, that's kind of what I meant by sort of second year being different. How was it for you? Like, it was, obviously you said you were more closed off because of what happened at the house.
I certainly noticed a change. I think, obviously, as we mentioned a bit earlier, the novelty kind of started to wear off a little bit. I certainly feel like that in the clubs I don't know. I think particularly in second year, I knew that was kind of the year where I had to start getting down to business, I suppose. So I wanted to distance myself from clubbing all night and stuff like that. I wanted to have a bit of a healthy lifestyle. And I say healthy. I say healthy theoretically because obviously I was getting a lot of takeaways. We were all getting a lot of takeaways at university. God bless LA Pizza.
Yes.
But I certainly feel like I was at that stage now where I was kind of turning into this guy who just enjoyed the casual pub, just down to the pub, something that was calm and something that wasn't going to, I could still get bladdered at the pub and stuff like that, but it wasn't going to be something where I stay out until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning.
6 in the morning, yeah.
And get back to a time where I wasn't going to be able to do anything or, contribute to anything that's going to make my degree a bit worthwhile. So certainly, I wouldn't say in second year that my social life went down. I think it just more changed. I think the kind of parameters of where I wanted it to go and what I wanted to do with it kind of changed. I went from being this 18-year-old, party boy who I wasn't really, who before then, honestly, I'd never really been to a club before.
Never been really out with
never properly been. So certainly in first year, I wanted to really try that kind of lifestyle. And while I did enjoy it, it's not going to be a thing where I wanted it to last really. So the second year, I started to prioritize my academic studies a little bit more over that kind of thing. So it didn't go down, but it changed. And I don't think anyone should be ashamed if it changes. It just happens.
No, not at all.
Think about it. The kind of clubbing, it might happen, every so often, but I'm not that type to go out every single night, every single Saturday, every week, spend a bit of money. It started to get to a point where I wanted to mature up a little bit and, get down to the nitty gritty.
Yeah, of course. Second year is a test of whether you want to take it seriously. Because first year is incredibly exciting. And you're out, you're going to student parties, you're drinking a lot if you choose to drink.
Yeah.
Among other things I shall not go into. But but first year is what you choose it to be. And second year, I think, is what divides people. Some people still stick with that party lifestyle. They want to carry it on, which is completely and utterly fine. But other people might want to. So, right, okay, I'm going to slow down a little bit. I'm a year older. I can see what I need to do this year at uni. It's a lot more daunting. Second year is a lot more daunting, academic-wise and assessment-wise than first year. So you're afforded less freedom, both from you and your own work ethic, but also from the work that you do, the work that you're given from university. And it's just how people adapt, because some people want to go out even more. Some people want to go out a hell of a lot less, like you did. It just depends. It really depends on the person you are and how you've grown. And either way is fine. Either way is fine. Just make sure you get your deadlines sorted. That's all I say. Don't miss them.
Yeah, I think now. I think we've reached a good point where we can now start to move into how second year affected us mentally, because as we both know, in second year we started particularly well, both of us went downhill, I'd say, a little bit mentally, and I can appreciate it's very hard to talk about. It's really hard to talk about, but if you can just reveal as much as you securely want to, where do you think, particularly mentally for you, where did it start to go wrong in second year, and where do you think it started to go wrong?
Basically, long story short, when we started in first year, my dad had just gone through a massive operation. He had bowel cancer.
Yeah.
And my dad had to go through really bad chemo. We had a torrid time with it because he wasn't well. He was as strong as he could have been, but we were all struggling. I mean, cancer's awful.
Cancer's a bitch.
Yeah, cancer is a bitch. And so that kind of having to cope with at home, and it wasn't a problem. You just had to adapt to the situation. But I looked after my dad a lot. I kept my mum going. We had very bad days, and things started to then obviously it started to get a little bit better. My dad got the all clear and is in remission and has been for 2.5 years, which is fantastic. But as time sort of went on, after first year finished, during the summer, I got quite, I don't know, things started to get on top of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't call it like a breakdown, but I had a very bad turn with my mental health, the worst I've ever had. And I got diagnosed with OCD, depression, and GAD, like general anxiety disorder. And I became very shut off from everyone. And I'm sure you'll agree with me on this. When anxiety keeps you from doing things and when anxiety pushes you back, that's kind of it. So for that's kind of it for you. There's no, it doesn't give you any room to breathe. So second year was kind of, for me, and obviously you can talk about your experience as well, but second year was kind of, I was kind of kicked back. With everything. I felt like I was going into uni on the back foot because I was so low all the time. Like, well, most of the time. I had good days. I'm not gonna, mar it with everything. But go on. But how about you? How did it? What went on with you?
Well, first things first. We're all really glad that your father's in remission and stuff like that, and it's fantastic. He has been for 2.5 years.
It's good.
I do remember seeing that change in you. When particularly in second year, you started to kind of, like you said, you shut yourself off a little bit, and everyone became very concerned and stuff like that because we could see this change. And I think the really good thing was that you didn't make it. You didn't make any bones about it. You didn't make a secret of it or anything like that. You didn't try to beat around the bush about what it was, saying you're fine and stuff like that. You were very open.
I tried to anyway.
I tried. But that honesty was just brilliant because everyone could understand where you're coming from, and people, particularly, I think, when you're on a theatre and performance course, one of the key traits of the people on that course is empathy. A lot of people on that course have been so empathetic to everyone else's, I suppose, predicaments and conditions and stuff like that. Everyone is so appreciating and they look out for you so much.
They do. Absolutely.
Which for me was probably one of my saviour things, because my second year, particularly after Christmas, started to take a bit of a turn because obviously we worked together on was it Performance Project? It was Performance Project. Yeah, we worked together on this module called Performance Project. But up until about, I'd say, December, everything was fine. I'd had a few, I'd say, situations or problems socially, which knocked my confidence back a little bit. And in my mind, there was something going, because I have a bit of, I overthink things a lot, and I do have a bit of anxiety here and there. But just before Christmas, something triggered that. It was small at first, but it started to grow and grow and grow. And I started to get more and more worried. And I was going back to times where I was thinking, in secondary school. So obviously you've seen my video on cover on YouTube and stuff like that. I talk about how I kind of wanted to be someone else. All those stuff started to come back in the second year of university because of certain situations. And in January, when we were getting ready to rehearse, and we had a very intensive rehearsal period for this performance that we were doing, I think particularly I think it was either at the end of one of my mates' performances and just before our first night, or just at the end of our first night, when we all went to the pub, something triggered something in me where I was down. I couldn't think of things to say. I felt like I couldn't talk anymore. I almost felt restricted. I felt very, very trapped in something to the point where I was just dead silent. I couldn't talk to anyone because I couldn't think of things to say without almost forcing a conversation. And I remember going home that night, walking home on my own, didn't get a taxi. I just wanted to walk. Got home. I felt very, very low, very depressed.
Yeah.
And I remember for the day of the second performance, I was in bed practically all morning. I'd rung my parents. I was so upset, just couldn't work out why. I was so low. And we were all meant to be going out that night to celebrate because we were the final performance, weren't we?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just feeling so out of my depth, so out of place. And I think I remember people saying that they could see something was wrong.
Yeah.
And I could never really work out why. And I remember my parents actually saying that, why don't you come back with us? Like, pack a few things together and actually come back home. So I did. So because we obviously had I think we had a 2-week break before we started our modules again, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
So for those 2 weeks, I went home and just
and you needed it
off. And it was,
you really needed it.
I really, really needed it. But even after that, when I came back, you know, all of the things hadn't gone away, because when anxiety, particularly at university, hits you, all these thoughts that go round and round and round in your head, you need a longer period for it to wear off. I think
completely.
I mean, just to think that you could do it in 2 weeks, particularly in January when it's winter and stuff like that. I think that was ambitious, to be honest. I think it was ambitious that it took. I thought it could just take that long for me to get rid of it all. I come back, you know, back to my first year self and stuff like that. So, what do you think of that? Like,
I agree. I think no anxiety, no worry, no sort of trough or like feeling of or an episode of depression is ever sort of going to be fixed with a couple of weeks R&R. It will massively help, I think, and I think you were desperate to get some home time, especially with everything that had gone on during the year, having to come back straight after Christmas. It is odd having to adapt to uni again, and especially because we went straight back in and we had our performance, because obviously we were in the same group. We had our performance straight away, or everyone else's performances straight away. We felt like we didn't really have much of a break.
Yeah.
And when you feel low and when you feel anxious like you were doing, I remember when you took a turn and you didn't know what was going on or what, you know, how you could deal with it, you going home made a massive difference.
Yeah.
And that, to everyone who has a bad episode and feels like they need to breathe, they need to, you know, have a bit of alone time or whatever, speak to your parents, your guardians, anyone, and just see what they say. And if you need to, go home, because it will, being with your house will make you feel more comfortable. Definitely.
I think as well, I think one of the bigger things for me, I remember it so clearly because I've learned, I hold on to those experiences to learn from. I think there were times when I felt afraid to talk to you guys about it. I think there were moments where I felt that, you know, in first year I'd worked really hard to build up this image. I was very positive. I was outgoing. I was really bubbly and stuff like that. And then I thought suddenly, because I remember some of it had happened in school because I talked about my emotions, about my feelings and stuff like that. I think I was worried at the time of how some people would react to that and how they perceive me afterwards. But obviously I know now to be honest about it and just to talk about it, because I think, you know, everyone would have accepted where I would have come from. And I remember we've had heart-to-hearts about it so many times where we've opened up and we haven't judged each other. We've just been there for each other. And I think that is probably one of the biggest things that I certainly feel like the education system needs to teach, particularly when they talk about these moments that you're going to go through, because everyone's going to have them. You can have them straight away in first year because you're living away from home. I think people need to emphasize that if you make friends, those friends are going to be there for you. Like, because who's going to listen to that and immediately think to themselves, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it yet. That's not my cup of tea, boy. Who's going to say that? Because that's going to look absolutely awful.
No, completely. It is very, another thing I'd say, like you said, it's very universal. everybody has a point in their life, and obviously with mental health coming to the forefront of a lot of stuff on TV, radio, dramas, stuff like that. It is at the forefront of debates and things like that. I think everybody has those moments. You could be as stern-faced and as strong and stoic as you can be, but everybody has harsh moments. Everyone has moments where they just want to hug off their mum, or you know what I mean. It is it's literally, and something as simple as that it's not necessarily a cure for it, but it keeps you going.
Yeah.
So it is. If anybody out there is genuinely feeling like that, it is normal. Being normal doesn't make it any easier, but be rest assured, you'll, with the right talking and the right sort of attitude from your friends, you can get through it. You will.
Yeah.
It's odd.
Look
at me and Jono.
So,
do you know what I mean?
So looking at not looking at us two, God, but kind of linking the kind of like the mental health and the academic kind of thing together now. How did everything that was affecting you mentally? How did that start to did it start to affect your studies in any particular way?
Yeah, absolutely. I sort of when you're depressed, especially if it's severe, there are days you get up and you just go nah, and you just go straight back to sleep, and it's a very odd feeling, because people, when they talk about their experiences, you naturally think, oh, so basically you wake up and you go, no, I'm not doing anything today. That's it. It's not a defiance. It's just a sense of giving up. And it's like your headspace and your mindset and the way you feel in there doesn't allow you to get up. So obviously academic-wise, like academia, I wasn't in a lot for a lot of seminars, lectures, and obviously that it feeds into this cycle of, I feel like rubbish, I'm not going to go in. People worry about where I am. If people genuinely are, they start asking me stuff, and then the next day it's the same thing. Oh no, I feel awful, I'm not going to go in, and it goes round in this circle of sort of, and it's a really odd cycle. You can't, especially if you're not well, it's very hard to get out of. I wouldn't say you can't get out of it. You can. It just takes a lot of oomph and a lot of pushing, and if you have people around you that understand you, they will help in that respect. So academic-wise, that was tough. Having to catch up a lot was tough. Not being able to get into groups with people because I wasn't in as much, people naturally were like, oh, we love you, but we can't, because we don't know if you're going to be able, if you're going to be all right during this. We won't be able to sort of take the risk, and that's perfectly normal. Do you know what I mean? It's alienating, to be fair. It's alienating, and it's sad, and it's very embarrassing, because you feel embarrassed by yourself and embarrassed that other people might sort of fall back or sort of come back. But don't be worried about that. Don't be you'll get through is the only thing I can say. And though those things make you feel like crap, if you start to find yourself coming out of the dip, you're suddenly your thirst for uni sort of starts to slowly come back. It will be hard, but that was my experience.
Yeah.
With all of that stuff. How about you?
I think academically, I still managed to bury myself in my work, because I think one of the reasons that I particularly chose a dissertation was that I stayed in control of things.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed my studies. I really enjoyed getting on with them and learning new things, because it gave me a focus. It gave me something else to focus on other than my other troubles, because it was a distraction. It was a really welcome distraction.
Yeah.
From everything that was going on. So I don't think it's certainly in the start when I was thinking about it, and I was doing independent work, I think at that point it started to really affect you, because you were thinking to yourself, hey, what do I need to do now to kind of distract myself? I tried to plow myself into my studies to really distract myself from what was going on in my social life. And I do remember there was one occasion where right at the end of the year, I'd completely finished the final module for second year in terms of practical, but I still had an essay to do for Shakespeare. But it fell on the day, I think it was varsity or something like that, and a lot of the others were off drinking and stuff like that. It was a really nice day. And some people invited me to join, but because I had this essay and I wanted it to get it done and I wanted to really hit the ground running, I never considered myself to be finished at that point. So instead of socializing with my mates, and because I didn't really have the confidence at that time, because my confidence following January, February, March, following that really torrid period where I was down and out almost, I almost felt I had to build that up so gradually to the point where it was like I was going to one thing a month. You know what I mean? I was going to one social gathering a month because I just didn't feel confident being around people, because I felt like my image had been tainted. But I almost needed the summer to come really quickly so I could just have a very, very long period to fix and heal. So academically, it provided a nice focus for me to distract myself. But once that finished, luckily it was then the summer, so I could move out of the house. I could stay with my family, and I had really nice plans for the summer. And so I think academically, like I said before, it was a really nice focus for me to distract myself from what was actually. It was a good year. It was a good year, but it had its downs. It had its learning curves. Let's say. It's had its series of hard learning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's, I don't know. The one thing I'd say, every year is completely different to the other years.
Yeah.
And you might not realize why at first, but looking back on it, you'll go, oh, wow. So like for me, first year was the sort of the quiet year, the sort of the, I sit back, I do my work, I get on with things. Second year was, I feel very low, so I'm just going to do as and what I need to get me by. And third year was kind of a mix of both, I guess. Whereas for you, obviously, you're saying your first year was sort of, I want to be out, I want to enjoy myself. This is first year, I'm with all my friends in this new flat. Your second year was kind of a lot more, I need to knuckle down, I don't feel great. I sort of, for a couple of times you want to really go home. And obviously we'll get on to third year, but your third year might have been completely different to either, or it might have been a mix of the two. I don't know. But that's what I think. Every year is different.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I feel like almost as if how we round off this part of the conversation, that's how we'll define it. Obviously, each year is different. And I think that's something that in this podcast we're very keen to stress, because it's not talked about enough. There's almost this kind of like this common feeling that, as I said, really right at the start, every single year is almost said it's going to be perfect. You know, people get old students in who have been to, you know, University of Birmingham or, you know, all the Russell groups and stuff like that. And people who have almost made something out of their lives, be it, you know, if they're only 22, 23, you get them coming in and saying it was the best part of my life. University was the best part of my life. And they're not honest about it enough. They're not honest about the fact that everyone's experience is going to be different. I know for some of my mates, you know, from school, I feel like they might have gone too early. I think they even know they went too early. And some of them left before they even finished first year. So it affects people in different ways. And I certainly feel like there's a pressure from schools to get you to go to universities.
Completely. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that the one thing I'd say is that me personally, if it weren't for the fact that I love all of you guys and I love all the people at uni that I speak to and will probably still speak to in the future, if I'd have had the choice again, regardless of, if I didn't know you guys, if I'd have had the choice again, I wouldn't have gone straight to uni. I would have done a foundation course, or I'd have redone my A-levels, or I'd have redone something, and I'd have tried to find maybe a different path. And that's not because I didn't enjoy uni. I loved uni for the most part. Obviously, like we've detailed, there were some days that were just torrid.
Yeah.
And obviously, looking back on it, you always look back on things with fondness, and I will look back on things with fondness. But I think it isn't, just to stress to people, sometimes going to uni isn't the right decision. Going straight to uni isn't the right decision. It might not be for you. And sometimes, unfortunately, like in my case, you only realise that after the fact.
Yeah.
And like I said, for me, if it weren't for the fact that I did enjoy the course and I love all of you guys, if I was to go to a different uni, I would first assess my options and not feel like I had to go straight in. But it was my decision. I wanted to go straight to uni, and sometimes for people it works and sometimes it doesn't. It just depends person to person, I guess.
Well, I mean,
moving in my chair.
Don't worry, I'm moving about my chair a lot as well.
That's fine.
But I mean, we're talking about reflection now, and I suppose that's the best part of the time now to move on to the year that has been affected by this huge pandemic that it's absolutely ravaged. And obviously this is our third year, this is our final year. Well, I say this is, it was past tense. But yeah, just for context for everyone who's listening, we were in a very interesting situation. I say very interesting because we were all preparing for our final module, our big final piece. It was kind of going to be a thing where we went out on a massive high, everyone showcasing what they'd learnt and what they picked up on. But obviously the coronavirus pandemic came in, and it actually hit us at a very weird time because none of us really knew what was going on, did we?
No, not at all.
Because right at the start, a lot of universities were saying, right, we're going to teach you online, don't come into university. But in the week where the UK was really just about to start getting really badly hit, we were still being required to go in. I remember literally just, I think about a week before the lockdown started, we
were still in university.
On that Monday, we were still in. But I think there was, over that weekend, everything had deteriorated so badly that there was a lot of doubts in our mind about whether this was going to go on. So we had gone in and it was very half-hearted. And we actually had a costume meeting that day with people who we got into do our costumes. And I think there was a lot of doubt in people's minds about whether it was going to go ahead. So I certainly feel like, just before we get on to overall what happened in the year, regardless of the pandemic, I think I would urge people to start considering whether they should defer a year and wait for all of this to blow over, because it will eventually blow over. Yeah. It will take a lot of time to get back to the normal, to what we have experienced before. But particularly for people, and I'm aiming this at people who are going to be doing theatre courses, what I'm about to say. If you're doing a theatre course, I would very strongly recommend that you defer a year, because going to university and learning online, it's easy to learn about the theory and stuff like that online, fair enough, easy to do lectures, but to do practicals online, it's just not doable. Not in large groups, and not in the way that we've learnt as well, because we've learnt so much practically through actually doing it in big rehearsal spaces and stuff like that. And to really get the full experience from a course like what we've done, I would very much recommend that you defer a year and wait for it all to go, so you can get that full experience. You got anything to say?
Yeah, no, I think this is all obviously like unprecedented, and it's a word that gets tossed around a bit too much with us. But if you're going to be the class of 2023, it is. I'd say you're going into this completely blind. You're one of the first, if not the first, year to ever have to go through this, having to think about what I'm going to do because of COVID. We're going to be known as the COVID generation easily, because this is the biggest, in modern history, this is the biggest pandemic that has ever hit. And obviously we are literally living history day to day. So what I'd say to do, especially like Jono says, because theatre is exceptionally practical, a lot of us, myself included, have found it very odd. Some of us have liked it. I haven't minded it, but a lot of us don't like having to do stuff over Skype. They don't like having to do stuff over recording things. They prefer to do theatre acting, so being on stage, being present live in the moment. Instead of looking at a camera, I'm not a fan of doing things to the camera. I'm very, even though obviously I'm doing this podcast and absolutely loving it, by the way, I'm very camera shy. I'm very camera shy. No, genuinely, I've always been like that. So obviously this is unproven ground, and I think if you're thinking about going to uni, assess all of your options. Even though it's not fair, it isn't fair, but assess all your options before going. Because you are the first to go through this. And it's rubbish. To be honest.
I agree. So take your time with the decision, guys. If you're listening to this, take your time with your decision, and hopefully you obviously reach the right one, because you do want your university experience to be the best it can possibly be. And just to close this really quick section of the conversation off, it is unprecedented, but things will eventually get back to normal. They will. And we aren't in this for absolute ever. It might feel like it right now, but we are going to get past this. But anyway, let's rewind a little bit to what does actually feel like a very, very long time ago, to the start of year 3. And Dan, when you were approaching year 3, biggest year, this was the big moment. This is the one that's really going to affect your overall degree grade. This is going to be your final year in education. How did you, when you were approaching that first date where we actually go back and we start on these new modules, this new big module that we had to do vis-a-vis PRP or dissertation, how did you kind of feel going into that based on what you'd experienced in second year and what you might have done to kind of strengthen yourself mentally over the summer?
Well, to start this, I guess I'd say most of the summer that I had was spent doing things that I hadn't handed in the year before. So I'd say I'd be different to you. A lot of what my summer and my preparation was finishing second year. And a lot of people, obviously everyone was like, and I still got to go on a nice couple of holidays and things like that, but a lot of what the summer was I was it was like I'd only just finished second year. And it was like, when you run a marathon, you're like, oh sweet, they're like, oh yeah, come on, let's go for a walk home. It's that thing of like going straight from running that marathon. I'm not comparing doing modules to marathons. But they might be marathons. I mean, you hand in the first essay and it's just like, oh god, I'm only at the halfway point. I'm not fit, guys. I can't do the rest of it. It is no. So I'd be slightly different to maybe other people in that I was like, oh sweet, right, I'm done. Oh god, third year. And I was kind of, but to be honest, from what I remember, I kind of just thought, you know what, this year is going to be better. I want it to be better. And I went in, I remember I went in excited. Because this kind of felt, for me, like first year again. Everyone had started to break off and become part of their own little houses. And it kind of felt like everyone was making their own little lives. So it felt a lot like first year in that people were all in new situations. I mean, some people stayed where they are, and those people know who they are. People who stayed, like I did, I stayed at home. But yeah, it felt a lot more like first year than, looking back on it, it felt more like first year than I think I care to admit. So yeah, I just remember being kind of excited. For third year, I don't know why. What about you?
I think I completely agree, because I think the situation had obviously changed. Over the summer, I went on holiday for the first time without it wasn't the first time, but it was with my mates. It was the first time I actually went on holiday with my mates. Went to Amsterdam, and that was beautiful. Absolutely loved it. I'd have stayed for longer. But it was still really brilliant time. I went to Scotland again for the first time in probably 2 years. And that's a lovely thing because it's like a family tradition. We have a kind of like a timeshare in Loch Lomond, and we went up there every summer with family friends, and I hadn't done that for a while, so I thought I'd do that. And
I'm exceptionally jealous.
and we went into and I remember saying to my parents, actually, because I was really excited because I'd moved into a new flat with the same property people, but it was kind of like their flagship property. It was the most popular one, the one that went so quickly. And the people in my house for second year, we kind of split off because we were in a house of 6, and the new one we were going to was a flat of 4. So there were 2 flats available. So we split ourselves off into like half and half, and then we added one other person to each flat. And I remember being so excited because the rooms were really nice and the place was nice. There was just a more positive feel about the place. It was a nicer tone about it. And I remember when I got there, because I moved in on the first day that it was available. I remember moving in and thought to myself, you know what, I already feel so much safer. I feel so secure. It's just brighter. There was a brightness about it. And I remember even over the summer, I was so excited for what the third year would bring. And it was, I felt the same as you. I felt excited for what was coming, and I felt like my first year self, ready to go back out. And as Gary Neville says in his Twitter bio, seize the day. I was ready to seize the day again. And
of course, and you did. You did. It's good. It is good. It is good. Third year is odd in the way that you've got 2 years under your belt, and obviously sixth form only lasts for 2 years. But you've got 2 years under your belt. Like we did, because we only had about 40 other people other than us on the course. You know everybody almost inside out. You know what you kind of want to do. You have sort of a third year gives you like a self. Not importance, but a self sort of satisfaction in that I'm going to do this. I want to do this. I'm no longer learning. I am doing. And it's kind of the final step to being, I don't know, I want to say an adult, because you move from student to adult because you're doing your dissertation or you're doing your practical projects or you're writing your own scripts. And that is the most adult thing you can probably do on the course. You're doing something that real creatives have done for millennia. So you're trying that. They've given you all the tools in the first 2 years. It is now how you choose to use all those bricks. And do you know what I mean? And do something for yourself.
It's certainly the year. It's certainly the year, isn't it? It's definitely the year where you're actually making something of your own. This is literally so original to you. This is your own thing, your own study, your own performance, something that you have created. And obviously with the support of the tutors who are giving you a bit of advice here and there, it is definitely something to walk away from, knowing with a sense of pride, you've created that. This is defining your time at university. And I think that's what I was so ready to do. I was so ready to create something that is going to actually, because obviously with school you had GCSEs and A-levels to kind of define it, but they were questions set by someone else and you answered them right and stuff like that. You got a certain amount of points, you know what I mean? But like, it's
rigid.
But this was original. It was something that you created, and I think that's what was so exciting about it. It was new. It was, it was just so independent. So obviously we've talked about how you felt running up to third year, but as the non-coronavirus affected section of the year went, how did you feel mentally going through that? How much of that was a change from second year? As a result of as a result of the experiences that you'd had from that?
Well, I hate to make the joke, but I actually turned up.
I mean,
I turned up a hell of a lot more than I did the last.
You certainly did. You certainly did.
I did, and I guess when you grow and you have a better like mindset, and you've gotten through the dark patches, and obviously we all have our dark patches, but once you get through those, the freedom of being able to go, oh, hello, I can actually start coming in now. I felt a lot more at home at uni. Yeah. Even though I spend a lot of time at my house, living here, I felt a lot more at home in third year than I did in second year. Because second year, I just couldn't pull myself to come in. So third year felt a lot more sort of like, I'm ready to do something here. And obviously that comes with varying results depending on whether you mess your lines up. Isn't that right, Dan? Yes, it is, Dan. Thank you. But it's kind of it all sort of builds up towards you feeling kind of a sense of self-accomplishment. And I definitely I will honestly say I preferred third year to second year in terms of everything that went on. Second year was fun socially. It was a lot more for me. It was a lot more fun. But third year, academic-wise, socially-wise, altogether, was just a lot nicer and more open of an experience. So even though it's hard work, and it is hard work, I think you'll enjoy it a lot more, especially if you do a course like me and Jono did. You'll enjoy it quite a bit more because it gives you more freedom, I think.
Yeah, because obviously in year 3 we barely saw any tutors. I don't think we had many lectures at all, did we? The contact time was significantly reduced to the point where I think we didn't go in much. Like some of us were only in maybe on a Thursday or a Friday or something like that, or Thursday to Friday, one of the two. Because I think, as far as I'm aware, we only chose 2 modules, didn't we? For the first semester. And I think that certainly mentally, the way I went about it, there wasn't any expectations. It was almost like the first year. I was going in with no expectations of what I wanted to happen. And
absolutely.
I was just raring to go on what I had chosen to do for my bigger, bigger module, so the dissertation. I was raring to go on that because I was ready to sink my teeth into it and just something brand new. And I think
I'm assuming those on your YouTube channel do they know what you did for your
They do not. They do not. I've actually not talked about it. It's the first time I've not talked about it.
Let's just say, if Jono doesn't want to talk about it, let's just say it's something he was very passionate about. And having seen the research and things that he's done, it is very good.
Thank you very much.
I won't say anything.
All I'll say is
it's something that you can talk about it at some point.
All I'll say is that towards the end, I got it in early. I was lucky, but I wasn't without. I didn't avoid the standard traditional dissertation drama where a piece of technology doesn't work. I wasn't, unfortunately.
Put it in early, no problem.
I wasn't invincible to that. I wasn't immortal to that. Unfortunately, I took a bit of a hit. But no, I was very. No, I was very proud of my dissertation. Thank you, if I may say so. And I actually got to meet the guy who I was writing about. So that was a big thing. That was a massive thing for me. But yeah, I mean, mentally, the way I approached it, it was just all brand new. It was all brand new to me. And I think the biggest, I will actually say this, the biggest thing was the accommodation, because I actually felt, not only did I feel safe, but the tone was brighter. The tone was brighter because we were going back, and I remember, because you've been to our flat, we were going back and we were having movie nights. We were, some of us were cooking, and the TV will be on, and we could have a football over there because my dad was lucky enough to have BT Sport, so we had Champions League and unfortunately Europa League if we were watching Man United. But
oh no!
But, I say unfortunately, but no, it was actually we've talked so much, in this podcast about our experience at university, and I think we particularly talked about our first and third years so much more positively and with enthusiasm than we've had with second year, because we've both identified that second year was, while there were mainly sections that were good, it was in parts a negative memory for us. It was but
no, I completely agree.
But if we're looking at it from a constructive point of view, it's actually a positive, because it's actually taught us so many things.
Absolutely.
In this situation that we're in now, we're not actually sinking down to. And
no, absolutely.
I think if to close off the kind of year 3 part of the conversation, it was nice to have that kind of positive memory of university, despite what has invariably happened in the second semester. I think to close it off, I think it was a very positive end.
Yes,
and it was
absolutely.
a much more positively rounded kind of approach in the third year for both of us. So we were using the lessons that we'd taken from second year, and we'd actually put those finally into practice in the third year to make it a better year for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say the one thing I'd say to bring it to an end is that it so happens that me and Jono both had our problems in second year. Uni will be different for almost everyone. Everyone will have tough things, but for us, our tough year was second year. For some other people, it might be first year and adapting to being new and stuff like that. For some, it might be third year. People might be going mad, tearing their hair out over their dissertations and stuff like that. It depends uni to uni and year to year and ultimately person to person.
Yeah.
But from obviously, if you've taken anything away from this, it's that uni isn't cut and dry. It's not. For some people, it might be 100 times better than they thought it would be. For some people, it might be 100 times worse than they thought it would be. But at the end of the day, uni is uni. And if you're prepared to do it for 3 years, then break a leg. And I hope it makes you feel fulfilled. Because at the end of the day, me and Jono were sat here chatting about it fulfilling us. And considering what we've both been through, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
We've reached the end of it. I mean, we've reached the end of the road for our education, which is probably the scariest thing.
Yeah.
We've been in this
terrifying
for our entire lives. We're staring at the bleak darkness of the world at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think I think now, obviously, to close the podcast off, in the title, University for Everyone is Universal. It's a universal collection of experiences that people are going to take, and every single person's experience is going to be different. And I think that we've shown the key thing of what we wanted to achieve with this episode in the podcast, and that is showing that university, unfortunately, is different for loads of people. And unfortunately, it does pain me to say it, there are bad moments, there are dark moments in your university life, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. You've got to look at that to make it stronger, to make you stronger as a person. And I think, and I hope that this podcast has opened your eyes, and particularly for those who are in sixth form or looking to go to university, I hope that this podcast has opened your eyes as well as to what to expect, and it kind of teaches you from our perspective what we've gone through and what you should expect, rather than it be a complete surprise. And also the fact that I want this so that you don't have to go and experience that yourself. You can prepare for it, notice the signs, and know what you can do, rather than finding out the hard way. Because unfortunately, for some people, it hasn't ended the best way that it should have done.
Exactly. People have dropped out. People have pushed back and decided they can't do it anymore. That uni isn't. It's one of those you won't know until you're there.
Yeah.
And if you get there and you decide it isn't for you and you decide it's this, that, and the other, that's okay. But it's as with everything, it's up to you. It is up to you in that moment and things like that. So yeah, that's something I'd want everyone to take away from this, I guess.
Yeah. So guys, thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Dan, for coming on the podcast. It has been a real pleasure to talk to you about it. And guys, if you're watching on YouTube, please get in touch below in the comments. I really want to hear what you thought of this podcast. And if you've got anything to say, any questions, we will be more than happy to answer them. As with all my YouTube videos, my social media handle will be at the end of this. And if you're listening on the podcast, please subscribe and stay in touch with us as well. I'll put my email in the description of the series above. So please get in touch with us if you want to ask any questions about general university life. And if you want any more in-depth examples, me and Dan will be more than happy to answer that for you. Until then, guys, please stay safe and have a sweet, delicious few weeks or weekends and stuff like that. Just have a sweet, delicious time, and we will speak to you again very, very soon.
One final note. Shout out to everyone on this Black Lives Matter wave. Everybody. Now is the time for change. And shout out to just everyone looking after each other, using your power, using your right to protest and things like that. We salute you all. Thank you for everything. Hopefully we can get some proper change.
Well said.
Indeed.
Right, guys.
All right.
Thank you very much, guys. Adios.